I've always been an outsider looking in when it comes to certain video game properties. Take Metal Gear Solid for example. All the kids at school were gushing about MGS3. You know what I was playing at the time? Shrek 2. I missed out on Kingdom Hearts because we had an Xbox. Played it many years later and I just stopped and never went back to it. I see the presentation and the gameplay knowing they're of the utmost quality, but my child brain was like, nah, why play those games when I can crash a sports car and shoot strippers with a bazooka in Grand Theft Auto Vice City? Actually, I think I made the better choice. Listen, the point I'm trying to make is, there are some games you had to have grown up with in order to really love them. We had patience back then after all. We had to. Weekend rentals were serious business. Nowadays, everything has to give you instant gratification. This game gives me none. It's Castlevania The Adventure for Game Boy. There were games I was at least familiar with, and that opened the door to others within the same series. I remember looking up to my older cousin who had a PlayStation. I watched him play Silent Hill and asked if I could play. Silent Hill was still too spooky for me, so he let me play Castlevania Symphony of the Night. That opened up an entire world of games to me. Though I'll admit I still don't entirely understand everything about Symphony of the Night, because it's a pretty complex game after all. But as a kid, playing a game where I can whip wolves and fish people in the face, that's pretty cool. From there, I played some of the games on GBA that felt somewhat similar, but it wasn't until I played the original game on NES and Super Castlevania 4 when everything finally clicked. They were more my speed. I don't think I would have been able to enjoy Castlevania as much if I wasn't introduced to its world and gameplay from an early age. With a series so vast with many titles, it's intimidating for anyone uninitiated to find a place to jump in. That brings us to this moment. I found an innocent little Game Boy cartridge for about $10 a year ago. And that's where my troubles begin. Castlevania The Adventure is not a good platforming game. Maybe you could argue this was perfectly serviceable back in 1989, perhaps. I can forgive the occasional button press that doesn't quite register, believe it or not. The Game Boy wasn't home to the most accurate controls. What I cannot forgive is the stiff, heavy jumping, and the fact the good people at Konami thought it was a good idea, for one reason or another, to design levels around platforming, the weakest aspect of its gameplay. And they put enemies where you almost cannot avoid them at times. Enemies respawn if you walk backwards, levels have very few checkpoints, so when you die, you go several screens back. And if you cannot figure out how to jump from platform to platform, guess what? You'll fall to your death and have to replay most of what you already played again before you even have a chance to retry the jump you missed. If you didn't know you're supposed to be hanging off platforms before you jump, well, guess what? You're in for one hell of a time. To add a cherry to this cake, the game has slowdown. Lovely. When platforming has specific requirements and your character walks and moves like a tank, slowdown messes up your timing and only frustrates things further. I captured footage on an emulator, but I also like to have the game so I have a better idea of what the game is like, just in case the emulator doesn't run the game properly. Emulating Castlevania The Adventure made me want to pull my hair out. My wife heard me making groaning sounds in the basement and she came downstairs to make sure I was alright. The best way to play is on an actual handheld, like my Game Boy Advance SP. You better believe I'm rocking the AGS 101. The movement is better, I'll give it that, but not by much. I could time my jumps just a little better, but everything else still applies. We've grown accustomed to much better games. Even though there are bad, mindless games I enjoy on the Game Boy, like Croc, it doesn't mean we have to subject ourselves to stuff like that, which is my entire point. Personally, I think Castlevania the Adventure would have been a much better game if they didn't put so much emphasis on platforming and the game ran a little faster. Look at the Donkey Kong Land games if you want to see a good platformer running on Game Boy. There's probably a legion of people out there who will vouch for this Castlevania. I am not one of them. I always say the easiest way to tell if a game is truly bad is if it doesn't have much to offer in terms of gameplay, and it's boring. The latter being the cardinal sin. Unless you're collecting every single Castlevania game ever made, or you're just curious, I say your time is better spent doing virtually anything else. This has been Castlevania the Adventure for Game Boy.